In typography, all caps, short for all capitals, refers to text or a font in which all letters are capital letters, for example, text in all caps. All caps may be used for emphasis, for a word or phrase. They are commonly seen in legal documents, the titles on book covers, in advertisements and in newspaper headlines. Short strings of words in capital letters appear bolder and louder than mixed case, and this is sometimes referred to as screaming or shouting. All caps can also be used to indicate that a given word is an acronym. Studies have been conducted on the readability and legibility of all caps text. Scientific testing from the 20th century onwards has generally indicated that all caps text is less legible and readable than lowercase text. In addition, switching to all caps may make text appear hectoring and obnoxious for cultural reasons, since all capitals is often used in transcribed speech to indicate that the speaker is shouting. All caps text is common in comic books, as well as on older teleprinter and radio transmission systems, which often do not indicate lettercase at all. In professional documents, a commonly preferred alternative to all caps text is the use of small caps to emphasize key names or acronyms, for example, text in small caps, or the use of italics or, more rarely, bold. In addition, if all caps must be used, it is customary to slightly widen the spacing between the letters, by around 10% of the point height. This practice is known as tracking or letter spacing. Some digital fonts contain alternative spacing metrics for this purpose. Association with shouting. Messages typed completely in capital letters are often equated on social media to shouting and other impolite or argumentative behaviors. This became a mainstream interpretation with the advent of networked computers, from the 1980s onward. However, a similar interpretation was already evidenced by written sources that predated the computing era, in some cases by at least a century, and the textual display of shouting or emphasis online was still not a settled matter by 1984. The following sources may be relevant to the history of all caps. The April 17, 1856 edition of the Yorkville Inquirer, South Carolina, uses the expression "this time he shouted it out" in capital letters. The 1880 book The Standard Speaker and Elocutionist has a section titled Shouting Style, which states that this will be seldom needed throughout an entire piece, but wherever the words imply calling, or commanding, it will be in keeping with the words to employ it. As examples, note the following selections marked in capital letters as the appropriate place for shouting emphasis. A large number of literature examples are then given where all caps has been used to represent shouting. The September 6, 1958 edition of Bookseller, the organ of the book trade, describes writing in lowercase rather than shouting with all caps. The effect is pleasing to anybody in a contemplative mood. A 2014 article on netiquette, online etiquette, in New Republic, titled How Capital Letters Became Internet Code for Yelling, states that, according to Professor Paul Luna, of the University of Reading's Department of Typography and Graphic Communication, all caps has been used to convey grandeur, pomposity, or aesthetic seriousness for thousands of years, and for many years to express anger or shouting in print. Examples are cited such as pianist Philippa Schuyler's 1940s biography titled Composition in Black and White, which used all caps to yell, and Robert Moses, who in the 1970s used all caps to convey rage at a draft of a book. Online news groups and bulletin board posts from around 1984 show that a user still needed to explain that if it's in caps I'm trying to yell, or that capitalizing whole words gives the impression that you're shouting. Another summed up that there seemed to be a developing consensus that emphasis was given to words via all caps, or by surrounding them with asterisks. Usage. Print media. Before the development of lowercase letters in the 8th century, texts in the Latin alphabet were written in a single case, which is now considered to be capital letters. Text in all caps is not widely used in body copy. The major exception to this is the so-called fine print in legal documents. Capital letters have been widely used in printed headlines from the early days of newspapers until the 1950s. In the 1990s, more than three-quarters of newspapers in the Western world used lowercase letters in headline text. Discussion regarding the use of all caps for headlines centers on the greater emphasis offered by all caps versus the greater legibility offered by lowercase letters. Colin Wheeldon conducted a scientific study with 224 readers who analyzed various headline styles and concluded that headlines set in capital letters are significantly less legible than those set in lowercase. Computing. All caps typography was common on teletype machines, such as those used by police departments, news, and the then called Weather Bureau, as well as early computers, such as certain early Apple II models and the ZX81, which had a limited support for lowercase text. This changed as full support of ASCII became standard, allowing lowercase characters. With the advent of the bulletin board system, or BBS, and later the Internet, Typing messages in all caps commonly became closely identified with shouting or attention-seeking behavior, and may be considered rude. Its equivalence to shouting traces back to at least 1984 and before the Internet, back to printed typography usage of all capitals to mean shouting. For this reason, etiquette generally discourages the use of all caps when posting messages online. While all caps can be used as an alternative to rich text bolding for a single word or phrase, to express emphasis, repeated use of all caps can be considered shouting or irritating. Such poor etiquette has led to a number of cases involving employees being laid off for this particular reason. Some aspects of Microsoft's Metro design language involves the use of all caps headings and titles. This has received particular attention when menu and ribbon titles appeared in all caps in Visual Studio 2012 and Office 2013, respectively. Critics have compared this to a computer program shouting at its user. Information technology journalist Lee Hutchinson described Microsoft's using the practice as literally terrible. It doesn't so much violate OS X's design conventions as it does take them out behind the shed, pour gasoline on them, and set them on fire. In programming, writing in all caps, possibly with underscores replacing spaces, is an identifier naming convention in many programming languages that symbolizes that the given identifier represents a constant. Surnames. A practice exists, most commonly in francophone countries, of distinguishing the surname from the rest of a personal name by stylizing the surname only in all caps. This practice is also common among Japanese, when names are spelled using Roman letters. Citation needed. Military communication. In April 2013 the U.S. Navy moved away from an all-caps-based messaging system, which was begun with 1850s-era teleprinters that had only uppercase letters. The switch to mixed-case communications was estimated to save the Navy $20 million a year and get it caught up with current Internet protocol. Readability. Miles Tinker, renowned for his landmark work, Legibility of Print, performed scientific studies on the legibility and readability of all-capital print. His findings were as follows: all capital print greatly retards speed of reading in comparison with lowercase type. Also, most readers judge all capitals to be less legible. Faster reading of the lowercase print is due to the characteristic word forms furnished by this type. This permits reading by word units, while all capitals tend to be read letter by letter. Furthermore, since all capital printing takes at least 1/3 more space than lowercase, more fixation pauses are required for reading the same amount of material. The use of all capitals should be dispensed with in every printing situation. According to Tinker, as early as 1914, Starch reported that material set in Roman lowercase was read somewhat faster than similar material printed in all capitals. Another study in 1928 showed that all capital text was read 11.8% slower than lowercase, or approximately 38 words per minute slower, and that 9/10 of adult readers consider lowercase more legible than all capitals. A 1955 study by Miles Tinker showed that all capital text retarded speed of reading from 9.5 to 19.0% for the 5 and 10-minute time limits, and 13.9% for the whole 20-minute period. Tinker concluded that, obviously, all capital printing slows reading to a marked degree in comparison with Roman lowercase. Tinker provides the following explanations for why all capital printing is more difficult to read. Text in all capitals covers about 35% more printing surface than the same material set in lowercase. This would tend to increase the reading time. When this is combined with the difficulty in reading words in all capital letters as units, the hindrance to rapid reading becomes marked. In the eye movement study by Tinker and Patterson, the principal difference in oculomotor patterns between lowercase and all capitals was the very large increase in number of fixation pauses for reading the all capital print. All caps text should be eliminated from most forms of composition. According to Tinker, considering the evidence that all capital printing retards speed of reading to a striking degree in comparison with lowercase and is not liked by readers, it would seem wise to eliminate such printing whenever rapid reading and consumer-reader views are of importance. Examples of this would include any continuous reading material, posters, bus cards, billboards, magazine advertising copy, headings and books, business forms and records, titles of articles, books and book chapters, and newspaper headlines. Colin Wheeldon stated that there is an apparent consensus that lowercase text is more legible, but that some editors continue to use all caps in text regardless. In his studies of all caps in headlines, he states that editors who favor capitals claim that they give greater emphasis. Those who prefer lowercase claim their preferences gives greater legibility. Wheeldon, who informs us that when a person reads a line of type, the eye recognizes letters by the shapes of their upper halves, asserts that recognizing words in all caps becomes a task instead of a natural process. His conclusions, based on scientific testing in 1982 to 1990, are Headlines set in capital letters are significantly less legible than those set in lowercase. John Ryder, in The Case for Legibility, stated that printing with capital letters can be done sufficiently well to arouse interest and, with short lines, reading at a slowed speed is possible, but in principle too many factors of low legibility are involved. Other critics are of the opinion that all caps letters in text are often too tightly packed against each other. An antiquated practice that still remains in use, especially by older American lawyers who grew up before the arrival of computers, is to use all caps text for text that is legally required to be emphasized and clearly readable. The practice dates to the period of typewriters, which generally did not offer bold text, small capitals, or the opportunity to add marginal notes emphasizing key points. Legal writing expert Brian A. Garner has described the practice as ghastly. In 2002, a U.S. court spoke out against the practice, ruling that simply making text all capitals has no bearing on whether it is clear and easily readable. Lawyers who think their caps lock keys or instant make conspicuous buttons are deluded. In determining whether a term is conspicuous, we look at more than formatting. A term that appears in capitals can still be inconspicuous if it is hidden on the back of a contract in small type. Terms that are in capitals but also appear in hard-to-read type may flunk the conspicuousness test. A sentence in capitals, buried deep within a long paragraph in capitals will probably not be deemed conspicuous. It is entirely possible for text to be conspicuous without being in capitals. Ambiguities. Besides the aforementioned speed of reading, all caps is constitutionally prone to character-based ambiguities. Namely, the uppercase letters are globally simpler than their lowercase counterpart. For example, they lack ascenders and descenders. Since they are built from fewer positional and building elements, for example a smaller grid pertaining to minimalist digital fonts, they are more fragile to small changes. These variations, generally involuntary but sometimes induced on purpose, are caused by misinterpretation, the information is transferred, or by a deterioration, the data is lost, in the analysis wording. They can occur horizontally and/or vertically, while misreading, without this extra effort or time, or during a delicate scanning of characters, from a damaged image that needs further contextual text correction. Depending on the typeface, these similarities accidentally create various duplicates, even quite briefly and without realizing it when reading. For example HA, FE or IT by adding a bar, PR, OQ, even CG from similar errors, VU, DO, even bits per second while rounding the shape, and more deformations implying mixings. Adding digits in all caps styled texts may multiply these confusions, which is one aim of LIT, intentional pseudo-duplicates, and can provide simple means of concealing messages, often numbers,